In today's Farm Report, saving genetically engineered seeds may seem like a good way to cut down on planting costs in later years, but as the USDA's Rod Bain reports, there are legal issues that farmers should be aware of.
Patents are expiring or have expired for several first-generation genetically engineered seed. Does that mean even with patent expiration, farmers can save harvested seeds from these plants and then plant them for subsequent crops? It depends, according to University of Maryland Extension Agri-Law Specialist Paul Geringer. One aspect to consider is the seed purchase contract and what it says about seed that is patented or not.
If they're signing it and it's no longer patented and they're signing a contract, typically the contract will have some sort of length in there as to how long they can go without saving it. So it'll probably be the growing season, which would limit any ability to save it and then replant it for the next year.
Also, there are other protections used by seed manufacturers and distributors even when a patent expires, not only using contracts, but the Plant Variety Protection Act to prevent growers from saving seed for future planting.
The PVPA, it was basically created to allow universities originally to be able to provide some protections against the seeds they develop. And typically with that, if you're the grower, you have a right to save the amount of seed to replant the same area that you originally planted. You don't have the right to sell it to your neighbor. You don't have the right to do anything else when you save it. You just have the right to save it to replant that same area.
Geringer says some universities and seed companies may limit those rights to protect genetic strain and have the best first-generation seed available to growers. Then again, provisions of contracts on expiring patents on GE seed may or may not be enforced by seed companies on a company-by-company basis.
For the most part, it seems like a lot of them may not because they've already moved on to second-generation type products.
Another thing to keep in mind, PVPA, the Plant Variety Protection Act, is enforced by state seed boards and commissions.
They get involved by issuing the certificates that go out to allow growers to know what they can exactly do with PVPA-protected seeds.
Some producers have learned firsthand, however, that patents are restrictive when it comes to saving GE seed. Geringer says with so many of these patents expiring, it's important for producers to ask questions, whether to a seed company or a cooperative extension expert or in conducting your own research.
They would want to ask, say, hey, is this protected? What are my rights? It's not a good thing to stick your head in the sand and kind of pretend that nothing is going to happen to me if I plant this seed.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. Dairy producers nationwide will again have opportunity to enroll in a USDA farm program that provides assistance when the margin falls below a selected coverage level. Farm Service Agency Administrator Val Docini says for the Dairy Margin Protection Program,
the sign-up begins on the 1st of July and extends until the 30th of September this year.
And Docini adds MPP enrolls farmers in the program through 2018. And the program allows open enrollment annually so producers can select their coverage levels.
We've got a good online resource. They can find that at our website, fsa.usda.gov/MPP tool. And there they can take a look at what the numbers might be for their unique operation and its needs and plug in a number and see if perhaps $8 or somewhere less than that, or maybe just catastrophic coverage.
More details about MPP are available at the local FSA office or online at www.fsa.usda.gov. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Last month, the USDA released its Hogs and Pigs report, and the numbers inside were of interest. Cindy Zimmerman with AgriPulse has more.
Hog producers are planning to cut farrowings more than expected this year, according to the latest report from USDA.
As you go forward into June, August farrowing intentions, again, these are pigs that have not yet, sows which are not yet farrowed but will be farrowing later. Producers indicated intentions to farrow 2.9 million sows, which is about 3% below a year earlier, and further out into September, November, we're actually talking about a 4% decline in farrowings at just under 2.9 million head.
However, USDA livestock economist Shael Shagam says that may be because pigs per litter this spring were up significantly.
We did reach a record 10.37 pigs per litter during March-May, which was 6% higher than a year ago. Again, pointing towards a recovery in the rate of growth in pigs after coming through the terrible times of PED when we lost a very large number of pigs. Some of the producers may have seen this recovery and assumed that if we have a certain amount of capacity in our finishing barns. To the extent that we have more pigs per sow coming out, we don't need as many sows to maximize the throughput going through the finishing barns.
The total number of hogs and pigs in the U.S. on June 1st was up 9% from last year. But with higher production comes lower prices, according to Jim Robb with the Livestock Marketing Center.
So the second quarter of this year on our baseline averaged $69.10 per hundredweight. That's down 38% from last year. We have the third quarter of this year with a little bit stronger prices on a quarter-to-quarter basis, 71 to 73. That's down 35% from last year. Fourth quarter of this year, we have 62 to 65 dollars per hundredweight dress basis. That's down 30% from last year, rounding the number. That'll give us an annual average price down 32% from last year for calendar year 2015.
During a pork checkoff conference call on the report, David Miller with the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation noted a geographic shift in hog production.
In the report, we see some reductions in Colorado and in Minnesota in the breeding herd, along with South Dakota, but we see increases in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, a little bit in Pennsylvania and Texas. But the major states of Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa all being flat at 100% of this year's breeding herd compared to a year ago.
Reporting for AgriPulse, I'm Cindy Zimmerman.
In some states, farmers are still not able to get into the fields to plant their crops. That was certainly true during the first 2 weeks of June when Agriculture Department statisticians interviewed farmers for the acreage report that has just come out. Extremely wet weather being the main factor, slowing planting down.
Even a big enough factor that we will go back and re-interview some of these producers in fields where acres were still left to be planted.
Lance Honig with USDA Statistics Service says they'll interview cotton farmers in soggy Texas over the next couple of weeks, sorghum producers in Kansas.
And then last but not least for soybeans, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri. Nearly half of those acres were still left to be planted when farmers were interviewed. So we'll go back, revisit those fields, find out what was actually planted and what wasn't planted there.
Once this new information is gathered and looked at, Honig says if they need to make changes in the planted acreage numbers, those changes will be put into the USDA crop report August 12th. That also will be the first survey-based forecast of actual production of this season's crops. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.